Hello and welcome back to another Opinionated episode. This episode is a bit different. This is our January transfer window special where we will be mentioning all the loans and transfers that happened in the January transfer window.
Yeah, January is typically a difficult window for people to buy in, but there was a lot of activity, particularly from one team. But we will go through all the big deals and all the big moves that affected the Premier League this year.
Yep. And the big team we were mentioning was Manchester City, who spent
Yeah,
180 million
yeah,
during this
a
transfer window.
massive, massive amount, big change. They've obviously had their difficulties going into January with the Rodri's injury and the fallout from that. But they were determined to stem the tide, and it was actions that have made people question if they're preparing for the consequences of the 115 charges or if it's just to stem the flow and try and get back on track. Now, the big one, the main one, the headline deal for them was obviously Omar Marmoush, the Egyptian talent. And he came for, I think it was like 60 million euros, rising to possibly 80. He's a big, big boost for their attack.
Yeah, the second top scorer in the Bundesliga this
Yeah.
season.
And he's a brilliant talent. He's obviously highly touted in Egypt, and is a big addition, especially after losing Julian Alvarez. They didn't really have anyone to come in and replace that. Now he can play on the wing, but he prefers to play up top. So they've got cover for Erling Haaland, but also it gives them strength in an area where they've struggled a little bit because of Jack Grealish's not performing up to standard and Doku being not quite as effective as hoped. So Vini is starting to step up, but Marmoush will give them pressure to really improve their form.
Mm. And the second big one that City made was a quite late
Yeah,
one.
right on deadline day.
Yeah, Nico Gonzalez for
Yeah,
50 million euros and up
50
to,
million pounds, I think it was.
yeah. And so that is also a great signing from Porto.
Yes, he's a midfielder from
Mm,
who trained at Barcelona, so Pep Guardiola
yeah.
knows a lot about him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Nico Gonzalez will really strengthen that midfield,
Yeah.
especially with Rodri out.
Yeah, he can play both. He can replace Rodri, but he also could play with Rodri once Rodri's back. So he's
Yeah.
a versatile midfielder. But their hope will be that he comes in and straight away is able to do that Rodri role, which no one really has been able to yet.
Yeah. Also, Nico Gonzalez has been helping Porto a lot this season because he's like a very strong midfielder. He can really he can play really cam and CDM.
Mm.
He's quite athletic. He's got a lot of athletic ability, and Pep knows him quite well. And so I think he will be a valuable player for the midfield, which is I think the problem that City
Yeah,
are
they're struggling
lacking.
with.
Mm,
I think Porto would be happy to sell because they're not having their best season. So they'll take that money and look to reinvest it to strengthen for next year,
yeah.
while Sporting and Benfica do well. They also spent a lot of money on centre backs this year, which is a little bit surprising because they have four already in John Stones, Ruben Diaz, Akanji, and
Okay.
Ake, and even Guardiola if you count Guardiola as well. So they have five already, but they spent heavily on two young talents in Kusanov and Vitor Royce. Um, Kusanov had a difficult debut, but he's a big talent, so there'll be a lot to expect from them both. But I think they're more long-term investments for the future more than,
Yes.
which is what makes people question whether they're anticipating potential punishments for their breach of financial fair play regulations.
Mm. These two young talents, I think, are more of the future goals because they have a lot of old players, or not old, but going to like get to the end of their career, like De Bruyne,
Yeah,
Gundogan,
yeah,
and some other players.
yeah.
They're quite old, and that's why they're playing quite young players like Rico Lewis, and that's why they're trying to really strengthen that youth in the
Yeah,
team,
they're trying
which.
to refresh the squad for
Mm.
sure, for sure, definitely.
Now we'll move on to another team.
Then second biggest spenders in the window, which is
A surprising team, by the way.
actually it was not. Yeah, it was a surprise because it was most of the action was done on deadline day, I believe. It was Tottenham who they bought Kevin Danzo,
Yeah, which
which
was
is a great centre back addition.
mm.
They needed it because obviously they're very depleted.
Then they also bought a
A
strong
highly coveted,
Matthias Tell,
yeah, it
which
was
was
a 10 million pound loan,
which was a buzzing
zero, and then 55 million buy option.
yeah, which was a buzzing
Yeah.
deal as many teams wanted
Yeah.
him.
And Tottenham never stopped pursuing him, and he's a very highly rated young player.
Mm,
Their former player Harry Kane spoke very highly of him, so it's a big boost for them in terms of their squad options and building for the future, which they've started to do with Archie Gray and
Bergval.
Bergval, and adding like Mikey Moore in the
Or,
squad. So they're looking for a long term plan there, but whether the more immediate boost for them is getting Kevin Danzo in, who should help strengthen that defense as they look to plan for the coming weeks and try and stop this poor run of form that they have.
yeah,
Yeah,
they lost quite dreadfully to Liverpool yesterday,
yeah,
but they'll Postecoglou's quite a learning man. He'll pick up from this,
yeah,
and now that he's got two new strong
yeah.
signings.
And players are coming back from injury and whatnot. You
Yeah,
should
like Van
expect,
de Ven's coming back next week, and
yeah,
so I think you can expect that they're going to get harder and harder to beat, and and even though they're like the second top scorers in the Premier League, I believe,
yeah,
they're now going to be get more deadly and deadly, and so
yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah, you'd expect them to turn around their form soon. And another team that will need to turn around their form is the third biggest spenders in the league for in January, which is Wolves. Wolves, they bought three new additions in Agbadu Joga, I think it is, and
Yeah.
Manetsi, which are all good squad additions. But the main deal for them was managing to keep a hold of Matheus Cunha for this season. He signed a new contract, which means that he has a release clause in the summer for 62 million, which pretty much guarantees that someone will come in for him, I would imagine. But for now, their priority is staying up, and with the new manager in Vitor Pereira, he's brought in players which should hopefully make them more secure at the back and capable of getting enough points to stay up.
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think Manetsi, Agbadu, and Dija are all good signings. Vita Pereira has done some like good signings and good additions, and he's also aimed to bolster up their defense and midfield options. And so he's trying to play tactically, and right now Wolves have to focus on staying in the Premier League because there's a harder battle for staying up than actually getting to the Champions League, and so there are a lot of teams fighting, and so their main aim is to stay up.
Yeah.
Now the fourth big spenders were Brighton.
Yeah, Brighton invested a lot in young players, which
Mm,
is their main method of doing deals anyway.
yeah,
Um, they've got Zimas from Bundesliga,
yeah,
Diogo Gomez and Cashin. They're all players with a view to building for the future. I think Zimas went straight back out on loan to the club that he was at. So that's Brighton doing what they do. They're not having the best season. They're not having the worst season. It's just a very middling season for them. They'll definitely hope to kick on in the second half of the season because they
yeah.
want a European place. But we'll see how they do. The next team, however, is a team who I think had the best transfer window.
They had a very good transfer window. They bought some very big players.
Yeah.
They bought one quite early on in the transfer window, Donyell Marlin.
Yeah, he was to replace, I guess, John Duran, who went out, obviously got sold for big money to Al Nassr.
Yeah, I think that was it was 70 million,
Yeah,
60 to
it was,
90
yeah, I
million.
think it was about 65 million pounds. I can't remember what it was in euros, but it was a big sell. And yeah, that facilitated them to really make some good business. So Marlon was brought in quite early, But on the it was really deadline day when they came to life because they brought in Marcus Rashford on loan, which is a massive addition.
And then
And
also
then
buying Marco
yeah,
Asensio from PSG, which was also a massive pace addition on the wing.
yeah, so their wings are as good as any in the league right now. And with
With
Watkins and Rodgers, that's a really deadly attack. They also
mm,
strengthened the defense by bringing Axel Disasi on loan.
yeah,
So that was a good addition for them. So they'll be a team to watch for the second half. They're obviously pushing for a Champions League place, and hopefully they can do well in the actual knockout stages of the competition because they now put themselves in a position to really contend.
mm. And I also think the pace on the wing is going to be quite outrageous because Leon Bailey and Asensio are both very pacey players.
Even Rashford, yeah.
Yeah, and Rashford and Watkins have good chemistry because they both played together in England as
Yeah,
well.
and Emery is a good coach for attackers, so
Mm,
it's going to be a really exciting team to watch.
yeah,
We'll see how they progress. They've obviously got the FA Cup this weekend, and it'll be interesting to see how they push on.
yeah.
Yeah,
And now another big spending. Well, they were quite quiet this transfer
yeah,
window,
very
man.
quiet. They only made one addition.
Yeah, but they were a big team,
Yeah,
and so they're not going to be as quiet as we know some other teams were.
yeah,
And the big main addition was Patrick Dorgu.
yeah. Important. It was a wing back,
Mm,
so he immediately comes in and probably will play most games. The problem for Man United is they had some financial restrictions, so they couldn't probably do the business that they wanted to do. They'll probably wait till the summer,
mm,
but they did manage to get Rashford out on loan. Obviously things had gone sour there between in that relationship. Getting his wages was a key one. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And they also got Malacia went to PSV on loan, so with a buy option of £10 million. So we'll see how they go. And obviously, it could be a bit of a difficult
mm.
6 months for them because
I think
they
Amrin quite likes Dallo, so he'll play in wing back, and then maybe Mazraoui can drop into like the back three as he plays.
yeah,
But we'll see how they progress.
yeah, exactly. Um, we said, and then yeah, the rest of the league was quite quiet, but there was a big addition for Ipswich Town. They managed to get Philogene off from Aston Villa, the big addition for their wing. They also got Ben Godfrey on loan.
Yeah.
So, so there's two good additions for them. The Philogene one was good for their attack, but I don't know if they have enough to stay up. The squad is still a lot weaker than most of the league, so we'll see how they do. They play good football at times,
Yeah.
but it's a tough position to be in. The squads that are better than them are above them, so the expectation is probably that they go down, and I think that's why they didn't go too crazy because they're just improving a squad that will do well in the championship next year also.
Um, Now, the next team that we're going to do was
Bournemouth.
mm,
Yeah, Bournemouth have bought in Junior Krupi, who's a good goal scorer. Obviously, they've got a lot of injuries at the moment, but they're a team that's flying high. So it's
and
more squad depth, I think.
yeah, they didn't really need to add someone, but he's a good player for a striker position, and he can support Clivert for Bournemouth, and they would be looking to strengthen a European place, and so I understand what Iriola's done, and
Yeah.
I really want them to do well.
Yeah. Chelsea's main business was next up. They brought in Matis Amagu, who is a builder for the future as well. The main focus though was getting people out on loan.
Yeah,
They did a lot of loan deals. They ended up keeping. Oh, they brought back Chalobah.
yeah.
Yeah, which will improve their defense because obviously they let go of Disasi, even though they didn't want to give him to a Champions League rival. He didn't want to go to Spurs, so they needed a centre back. They bought Chalobah, and it was a bit cheeky. I think they tried to hope that Crystal Palace would buy him for £40 million, but they didn't take that offer up, and so they've added him back, and they are now in a position where they are loaning out the young talent because that's a big financial plan for them by selling those.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, not much to really change their immediate short-term future.
Yeah, I think Chelsea have played it quite tactical because they're trying to push for a Champions League place, and right now it's going to be quite a hard one. So although not spending a big money, which we all expected them to do, they've gone and played it quite smart.
Yeah.
Right.
Next up is Crystal Palace.
Mm.
They made one signing. Obviously, they let go. They were not able to do anything about Chalobah, who's gone back to Chelsea. But they brought in Roman S from Millwall. Good young talent, is a promising attacking player.
Yeah.
He's already scored for them. So I mean, it was in the last, but it was he's got off the mark, which will give him a massive confidence boost. But not exact again, not much to change for them. They're in a bit of a uptick in form, but this season looks like it's going to be one for them to just reset and then go again for next year.
Yeah. They'll also be pushing to get in the top 10, and they're really a mid-table team, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that they would be trying to stay up, although I think they would do
yeah.
well.
Yeah, the next two teams are basically teams that are almost dead and buried in the league, but they are trying to build something to see if they can hope. First is Southampton, who added Grombach, who's a midfielder. They'll probably added him more as someone who can help them get promoted back next season rather
Yeah,
than someone this year because they're basically relegated. The squad is not doing well. They're struggling. They have moments, but it's not great. And it's similar for Leicester. Leicester were financially hamstrung because they put themselves in a pretty tricky position. So they only brought in Koulibaly for who again will probably do better for them next season rather than have any immediate impact this year. They're both teams will be looking to see what they can do with their squads and figure out what's best for the coming months. I mean, I don't expect them to stay up. If they do, it'd be a minor miracle, but I think they're both teams that could easily get promoted back up with the right plan.
yeah, right. Another team who are high flying, not the biggest signings, but they didn't really need to spend. Nottingham Forest
Yeah,
um, spent on Wayne Hennessy
yeah,
and Tyler Binden,
yeah,
who provide depth for their squad, but they didn't need
yeah,
significant financial
yeah,
outlays. So
yeah. Yeah, there's a cheaper additions and they're just depth signings to help with their push for the Champions League places because they've been quite fortunate, I'd say, with injuries so far. They just don't want to be caught up in that if it does come to it. So, yeah, good depth signings. Wouldn't expect them to play much in the coming months.
yeah, and the final team that spent this transfer window was Brentford, with
Yeah,
quite a key wing-back
yeah,
addition, Michael Coyote.
yeah. He's a good prospect. He's a
Yeah,
good Italian right back.
he's a very good young talent.
Yeah.
But he wasn't spent for the biggest
Yeah,
money.
he's a loan. He's a loan with the option to buy from
Yeah.
Fiorentina, and it stays with Brentford's model of using their scouting network and building for the future,
Mm.
and investing when it's at the cheapest, and then them really coming to their peak when they're playing for Brentford. So they'll be wanting for him to develop over the coming months and probably buy him in the summer, and hopefully they can get European players for them to really capitalize on that. Otherwise, I imagine some of the players like Mbuemo and Wissa will be sold in the summer because they've been performing so well that some of the bigger teams will start to look for them.
And then
And
Evan Ferguson went on
oh
loan for
yes,
West
oh
Ham.
yes, that was a good
That
one.
was a
Yeah,
big also addition.
yeah, massive because they didn't have any strikers. I always forgot about that. Yeah, that was a really good addition by Graham Potter
But
because now he gives them a striker at a
and
time
he
while
has good links with Evan Ferguson as
yeah,
well.
exactly. And West Ham are starting to improve, and he will play a key part in that for the coming months.
Right.
Yeah,
Um, three teams didn't spend more than that actually. Arsenal, Everton, Fulham, Liverpool, and Newcastle
yeah.
were- did
No business.
no business in this window,
Yeah,
but they'll be Arsenal, especially looking for a striker in the summer.
yeah. They made a bid for Ollie Watkins apparently.
But it
It was
wasn't.
a ridiculous bid.
Yeah.
So I think it was more just hope and then showing their fans that they're looking, they're trying, but then no actual like intention was to spend hefty on a striker there in
Mm.
this window.
Right, those were all the transfer
Yeah,
deadlines. We will see you again for the Carabao Cup and FA Cup games.
yeah. I'll
And
do that. We'll have a good look at that because there's a good few games
there was a good few games, and we'll cover off all the different games. And until then,
yeah. I'll see you next time.
see ya.
Best of
Bye.
luck to your teams. Bye.